What is going on, guys? Blazing Tech here. Glad to be back as always. Had a great summer and I want to make some more videos, so here we go. So today we're going to be taking a look at something and answering a question. Which camera is the best if you're on a budget or you're just looking into getting into photography? Between this, the Canon Rebel EOS T6, and this guy right here, the Sony A6000. So guys, I popped the T6 in my camera bag as opposed to carrying around my A6000 for about 2 weeks, and I'm going to tell you guys kind of some weird things, some cool things, and just some interesting things about the T6 in general. So here's one that you just might have heard, or you probably did hear, that it shuts off rather quickly. And I know that you can adjust that in settings, but it was kind of annoying, and the menu system, in my opinion, was very straightforward in this camera, and I really appreciated that as opposed to the Sony menus, which are a little bit convoluted, but yeah. So something else that was really weird in my opinion is that, you know, if you open the battery compartment, let's say you wanted to change a card, the camera shuts off, which is really weird, and there's no metal connections between the battery door and the battery itself. I don't know why it does that. So if you wanted to switch a card, you'd have to switch the camera off, or you know, if this camera decided to overheat, you couldn't just open this door right here to let some heat out, which was a little bit weird. Something else that I thought was a little bit weird was that you can't really look into the viewfinder when you want to. You actually have to push a button right here which doubles as the record button, which is also kind of weird because the little red dot is right there and you wouldn't really be able to see or know that, you know, oh, that's your record button. So in order to switch between the display and the viewfinder, you actually have to click a button. My initial impressions are that this camera, although it is built a little subpar than my A6000, at its price point and for what it is, if you're looking into getting into photography on a budget, this is a great camera for still photography. The kit lens was not very impressive, but it did take some sharp images, and because I'm making this video for the budget-oriented people, you know, I kept this camera in auto shooting mode, and you know, beginners would typically stay in this auto shooting mode and not really mess with the shutter speed or the aperture priority. So in the interest of fairness, when you see these sample photos that I'm going to show you guys, I have this set to auto and I have my A6000 set to auto as well. So let's talk about this. The screen has a very sharp display. I'm not going to bore you guys with numbers, but you know, the screen itself is really sharp, and unlike the T5, the viewfinder was much sharper than I had expected. And also, you cannot shoot video by looking into the viewfinder either. You have to be looking at the display, which is a little weird. The button placement and the grip of this camera is actually really good. At first I was kind of complaining about the size of the body, but after using it for a week or two, it's actually not that bad, and I've grown to like the grip and how it feels in my hand, and I kind of like the size, I'm not gonna lie. The size is really cool, and yeah. This camera isn't extremely clunky, but is definitely big, but at its price point you can't really complain. The images that this camera shot using its intelligent auto they were actually really good. I was surprised with the color rendering of this rather than my A6000. Now that's a little bit good and bad depending on how you look at it. Good in the sense that this camera has a little bit more vibrant colors, and the greens pop a little more, the blues pop a little more, but it's also bad because it's not necessarily a quote-unquote natural image when you're shooting in intelligent auto. Now you can correct that if you go into programmable or you know, your manual exposure, your manual shutter speed, and your manual aperture priority. So that's all something that as you grow with the camera, you're going to be able to, you know, adjust more. But yeah, just this camera, you know, I was surprised with it. The autofocus now on this camera was semi-decent. I'll give it about, on a 10, maybe about 5. 5 to 7. It surprised me in some instances. So what I'd like to say is that you're going to get, I want to say, about, for every 10 shots that you want with autofocus, you're going to get about 6 of them. Now, there were definitely some difficult situations and some photos that I took where it was like, wow, you know, you're really not focusing anywhere and you're not focusing on what I would like you to focus on. Now, I'm sure that there's some ways to, you know, get in here and finagle with it, but I found it easier on a couple of different instances to just switch this guy over to manual focus on the lens, which is actually really cool that you can switch it to manual focus on the lens. So I found it easier to just switch to manual focus and, you know, mess with the focus ring right here rather than, you know, trying to play with the autofocus motor. And that comes in again at something that, you know, is just a little bit different between mirrorless camera and mirrored cameras. Now I'm filming with the Canon T6. This camera is good for video. I'm using autofocus because I'm not moving, and it should be working really well right now because I'm in the same spot. And I'm using the kit lens. I'm probably at 28 millimeters, and I'm letting the camera do the rest. So we're going to be talking about my trusty A6000 here. Now, compared to the T6, this thing is a baby. This camera you can just throw in any pocket. The body of the camera is a much better build quality of the T6. You've got a much sturdier and much harder plastic. You're not gonna have all those little stray marks that you're gonna get with the T6. It's a nice harder plastic and it feels a little bit better. Even the grip right here is a little bit of a better material, and there is a bit of a thumb rest right here, but since this camera is so small, you kind of have to really scrunch up your hand and scrunch up your thumb like so to get and to take full advantage of the grip. Now, I wish the grip was a little bit longer this way, or just a little bit wider in general. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to scrunch up my hand. And my hand is really small, so imagine somebody with a larger size hand. Now, since this camera is small, the button layout is a little bit more tricky than the Canon T6. But if this is your first camera and you're looking to get into photography, like me, you can really get used to the camera. So, we are comparing these cameras with kit lenses. I did not point that out, but this is the kit lens. This is a 16 to 50, I believe, f3.5 to 5.6 power zoom lens. Yes, it's a 16 to 50 power zoom lens with image stabilization, and the Canon lens is also stabilized as well. But this has a power zoom, which is really cool for video and cool for stills as well. But very, very cool for video because it's very smooth, it doesn't make that much noise, and also since it's a power zoom, it makes the form factor of the A6000 even smaller. So taking a look at the bayonet mount, and because this is a mirrorless camera, you have no mirror right here, so this is going to be really quick because I don't want to expose my sensor. So here you go, good build quality right there. Put this back. And you can see that this lens is much better built than the Canon lens. It is an all-metal design right there, and that goes straight into my camera. So let's mount this guy up to the A6000. You have to do it quickly because you have no chunky mirror to save your sensor. And sensor cleaning on the A6000 is a little bit expensive depending on what area you are in. Now, this is an APS-C size sensor camera as well, and you can see that paired with this camera is tiny. So because it's a power zoom, you turn it on and it does extend a little bit of ways, but when you're using the camera out like this, the size does not really matter. But you see when I turn it off, it does go back into a smaller form factor, so you can just throw it into any bag. So this camera's autofocus system is absolutely phenomenal. I kept it in just the intelligent auto mode, and I can tell you guys that this camera just runs circles around the Canon T6, and I'd venture to say that this camera will run circles around the T7, or if they're up to the T8, it will run circles around that. This will run circles around the 60D, and this will run circles around the 70D. This is a better shooter than the T6. The T6 is an 18 megapixel APS-C size sensor. This is a 24.3 megapixel APS-C size sensor. The Canon T6 shoots 1080 at 30 frames per second. This will shoot 1080 at 60 frames per second in a higher codec. So this is XAVC, I believe. And the 60 frames per second video is absolutely phenomenal on this. Even shooting at 24 frames per second, like you'll guys see, since the autofocus on this is so good and the image stabilization of this particular lens is better than the Canon T6, you can shoot at whatever frames per second you would like, and you can get some very good, useful handheld video. And that's what a beginner is going to use. Where if we were talking about prosumer or like pro amateur, I could really sit here and dive deep into the cameras, but we're looking at this from a beginner standpoint. And I have to say that the portability of this camera, you really can't beat it. For the pictures that you get, like, you can slide this into a pocket, you can slide this into shorts pockets. With the lanyard it is a little bit awkward, but I have done it, and yeah. Something really cool about this camera is it has an electronic viewfinder, and it's an OLED viewfinder. And since it's mirrorless, like, I can look into the viewfinder whenever I want, and I can see exactly what my display is showing. I can look in here for video, I can look in here for any photo I want. What I see from this viewfinder is what I'm going to capture. And this is a phenomenal concept because, if it's really sunny outside or it's really dark, you can really look inside of here. You can set your shutter speed, you can set your aperture priority, all in here, all in the camera, and you're going to see exactly what you are going to shoot. Now, the Achilles heel of the A6000 is that battery life is subpar, so you're going to have to carry around batteries. Not so much the Canon T6. The battery life on the T6 is absolutely amazing. I will give it that. Okay guys, so what we're going to do now is take a look at some photos here. So I want you guys to look at this photo right here of this flower, and I want you guys to notice how natural the colors look, how natural the purple looks, the detail everywhere, how green the actual leaves look, and just the colors of this photo. And then we're going to go ahead and take a look at the next photo. Now this photo does not look as detailed and as clean as the first photo, and this is because the first photo was from the A6000 and this is from the Canon T6. The A6000 does a little bit better job with the colors and the lighting as well. So on this first image, I want you guys to notice how sharp that particular leaf right there in the center, the lower center of the frame is, and then how this camera does a good job of blurring out the background and the sharpness of the white flowers. And take notes of the colors as well. Now this photo from this camera does a little bit of better job blurring out that background a little more crisply than the first photo. The first blur in the first photo was a little bit grainy for my taste, and there was a lot of soft spots in the frame. Now you can see here that the consistency of the sharpness of all the petals of each leaf are here, and then the petals of the flowers are also very consistent. Now the first photo would be from the Canon T6 and the second photo would be from the Sony A6000. But just in my opinion, if you're going into photography, the A6000 runs circles around the Canon T6. It does cost $150 more. The A6000 with this kit lens comes right in at about $590, I believe. And the Canon T6 with that kit lens costs $449. So you are going to pay a little bit more, but I think just from a very beginner standpoint, somebody that's going to shoot stills, I would say that the Canon T6 is a great camera for you. You don't want to do any video, Canon T6 all the way, you're going to save some money. Somebody that's going to look to do a combination of both, I would go with this camera right here, because just shooting in the intelligent auto, and this has a superior intelligent auto mode as well. The brains of this camera is 10 times better, and the better autofocus in this camera translates into better shots and more shots that you want, and you have that option right there. This camera also shoots 11 frames per second, which is absolutely unreal. Coupled with the fact that the autofocus system in this camera is out of this world, you can get some amazing sports shots. The Canon T6 only shoots at 3 frames per second and the autofocus is terrible. So go figure about your action shots there. All in all, guys, although the Canon T6 is a little chunkier and it's got a little worse build quality, this is still an amazing camera for stills. The autofocus is a little finicky, but I think a beginner could learn to live with it and learn to love it and learn how to use manual focus. And at its heart, manual focus is more of a photography thing anyway. So if you're just going for stills, the T6 would be perfect for you. This camera is capable of taking some amazing images, but it suffers a little bit in the video department, as you guys have seen. But at the end of the day, a camera is an investment. I personally think the A6000 will last much longer than the Canon T6, and it offers you guys more room to grow and more reason to love photography. The A6000 to me has a little more natural colors, and the fact that the autofocus is absolutely sensational and the chip inside is better than the Canon T6, and the fact that you can shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second and the autofocus makes the video 10 times better, I think you can't go wrong. And it's more portable. It's just really a win-win-win-win-win situation in my opinion, and it's worth the extra $150. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching Blazing Tech. Be sure to check out my other videos about the A6000. I'll leave that link down below. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this, please stay tuned for more videos and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you soon. Bye.